For we discussed about containers, how Spring containers help us to create objects, how containers help us to create objects of our classes, right? And how they create objects also we understand. One will create objects in a lazy manner and one will create in a eager way. And in both the cases they create single object only, not too many objects. Okay, it will create only one object for entire application. So if it is going to create a object for user request, lot of objects it will create, so unnecessary memory it will consume. So always I recommend you to use singleton objects only. For that purpose you need not to configure anything specially here. By default your objects are singletons in Spring. By default here the scope is singleton only. Okay, we never use prototype. Okay, we never use prototype until unless we have a special requirement for it. Yeah, now before proceeding ahead, right, for dependency injection we'll talk about MVC versus POSO here. Okay, again one more time. Yeah, MVC versus POSO, very important again this here. Okay, why? Because we implement application. If you implement application by using Spring or Spring Boot, okay, your MVC application views anyway they are independent. You can use any technology, HTML or any other framework like Angular, React, or any mobile UIs you can have. Coming to our backend part, your controller classes and the model classes. For a plain application, right, if you don't have much services or much dependencies, we will have simple business class, a repository class. For that repository, we will have some entity classes. Okay, table equivalent entity class. If you are aware of Hibernate, right? One entity class we will create for each table which is there in database. For your application, if you have two tables, one student table and one course table, if you have here, same student course bean classes we will be creating. Table equivalent beans we will create here. So you will be having entity classes. Entity, repository, business, control. Apart from all these, if you have any mailing services or notification services, you may have here. So while implementing this controller class or your business code, repository, or your entity, or this mailing services, or if you have any exception handling services, okay, some AOP classes we will use here. maybe exception logs if you are covering by using AOP. You do whatever, right? To implement a controller class, generally in servlets, how we will implement? We'll implement a class like public class student servlet extends HTTP servlet. We used to put a direct dependency of HTTP servlet without extending HTTP servlet, or without, earlier days, without using, without extending HTTP servlet, your servlet will not get servlet behaviors. So it used to force us to extend this HTTP servlet compulsory. Without extending HTTP servlet, you cannot able to get the servlet features into your servlet class. Or else, wherever you deploy your servlet class, right, Tomcat container or any servlet container, it will not recognize your class as a servlet if you don't extend your class from HTTP servlet. So some kind of tightly coupled dependency they put here, right? So it's always mandatory to extend your servlet class from it. So this is kind of tightly coupled dependency. You are trying to put a direct dependency of HTTP servlet here. In future, if you withdraw that idea, and if there is any better technology than servlet, if you want to adopt it, again you need to do a lot of code changes. You need to change these extensions and methods. Everything might change. So some kind of tightly coupled class. So your servlet class is some kind of tightly coupled class. Even for business and repository also, when you go with EJB, entity bean, session beans, you need to extend the classes. EJB, entity bean class, session bean classes. So always our controllers, business repositories used to be tightly coupled classes, because frameworks like servlet framework, EJB framework, or if ASF framework, they always force us to extend my class or implement my class. They used to force us. Compulsory you need to extend my servlet classes, or compulsory you need to extend my action servlet or action class, or in EJBs, entity beans, session beans, right? Such a mandatory dependency they used to put. But from Spring onwards, Spring is not going to put any direct dependencies. What Spring recommending to you is, what Spring recommending to you is, write a simple POSO class for controller or business, or for any add-on services like mailing, logging, transaction, security, whatever you implement in your MVS application, whatever class you implement, remember this rule. Just create your class as a plain class. Don't extend or don't implement any APIs. Simple POSO class is sufficient. Simple POSO class is sufficient for controller. Then you may ask question, what is POSO class? POSO class means simple Java class, which is not having any dependencies. Student control. So this is a simple POSO class, because I'm not extending anything. I'm not implementing anything. And if this class having some variables methods, that itself is a POSO. A simple POSO class, which will have simple variables and methods. So this is simple POSO class. Spring recommending to use simple POSOs for your implementations. A plain Java class. Will that sufficient to read request from controller? Yes. Spring will take care internally. You need not to bother about it. So whatever method you wanted to write, write it. to receive the request. So that you need to mention in Spring configuration. So what it will do directly, it will pass that parameters to your methods, whichever method you mention to read the data. So automatically your method will read data, and from here again it need to travel until business. So then how this business class will come via dependency injection, it will come to your variables. So then using that dependency variable, from controller to business we send data, from business to repositories, or from business to mail, or any other classes we can pass request. But you have to make sure your class is poser class. Why so? If you make your class as a poser class, then your class is always loosely coupled class. Your class is always loosely coupled. Yeah, some more other rules we have to make it loosely coupled. We will see that in dependency injection, right? So writing or having simple plain Java class for controller, business and repositories will give many advantages to us for future maintainability, extensionability. It is very easy if your class is a plain Java class. Instead, if your class is having lot of extensions, implementations, then your class is always having the dependencies of others. Others rules you need to follow. But from Spring onwards, you need not to follow any rules. Have your own class without extending and implementations. Will that get business features, or will that get controller features? Will that get repository features? Yes, you will be getting. Okay. So plain Java class is sufficient. Plain Java class is sufficient for your MVC implementation. That is what we did here, right? Why we created only Pozo class object here in this example? Because going forward for controllers, services, business layer, simple Pozo class is sufficient for you. So that's why we learned how to create this class object via Spring container. We created simple Pozo class here. We configured that class here, and we loaded that class into our container using application context or bean factory. Let me create one more example. Create a simple Java project, MVC versus Pozo. Right click, go to build path, configure build path, add external jars. You know that 3-4 jar files are sufficient, but I'm adding everything. Okay. So Spring jar files added here. Now let's create a package com.rbu. Some application. Okay. So something I'll mention here. EMS web. So here I'll have one controller class. Fine. I'll create one controller in web package, and I'll create uh, business classes in service package, and I'll create database classes in repo package. And if you have entities, right, entity classes, you can create a separate entity folder and keep them in an entity package. Now let me put the classes here. Okay. A class A is consider controller class. and in service I'll put class B. First is controller, next is service. Then what next? Repository C. And entities means your bean classes. I mean table references, right? So which you map to table. Consider it as a D class. Now I have ABCD classes, which are plain Java classes. Okay. So let me put some output statement here. System.out.println a object. B class object. C. Okay. C object. Okay. So consider these classes A, B, C, D classes. A means your controller, B means your business class, C is repository class, and D is your entity class. So I just created all my MVC classes, simple Poser classes. Just you need to configure them in your XML file. So put one XML file here and configure all your classes. So here is my XML file. Configure all ABCD classes. Bean class A. Fully qualified path we need to put, right, which means always remember giving simple class name is not sufficient. Package name dot class name you need to put. Okay. So A class and B class is part of service. B class, C, and D. D available, C available, B, A. Okay. So all four classes configured here. My controller, business, service, my controller, service, repository, and entity class. Now load these classes into your container. So create one client class. I'll be writing one main method class here. You know, right, how to load application context AP equal to new class path XML application context. So I'm using J2EE container here. Which container it is? J2EE container. So here you need to pass your XML file path, right? That is also fully qualified path. Your package name dot file name. No, actually, yeah, yeah, J2EE container only. Application context is a J2EE container. Yeah. But while we use Spring Boot, right? Spring Boot or MVC, it will use web application context. Okay, this is for handling web request. As we are just practicing IOC module, right, core modules, this is sufficient. But going forward, once we jump into MVC and Spring Boot, this container will be used. Okay, you will be getting how that container will work. Okay, now the fully qualified path of your XML given here. So when I load this XML, what it will do, it will read all your classes. A poser class, B poser class, C, D. All your poser class objects are created. Okay, plain Java classes. So throughout your MVC or throughout your Spring implementation, you will see classes in a similar way. Simple classes only you will be seeing, but with a lot of capabilities. Class will be simple, but with a lot of capabilities. That capabilities will be provided by Spring only. Okay, your class will get lot of powers via Spring, but without tightly coupled dependency. Earlier also we used to get that capabilities, but with tightly coupled dependency. Now, no tightly coupled dependencies here. Just plain Java classes are sufficient. If you follow this POJO approach, your application is very lightweight and loosely coupled. Okay, your application will be loosely coupled application. So loosely coupled application advantages are many. We will discuss. Okay, what are all that advantages? First, let us go through dependency injection. So far we understand what is POSO class and how POSO classes are useful in our MVC implementation. Now, again coming to the same application, right? If C class object requires in B class, or if B class object requires in A class, or if D class object requires in repository class, how one object will be available to other object? So for here we see how these objects are creating. A class object, B class objects, how they are creating we understand. Now, if my A class wants B class method, or if my B class want to call C class method, or if my C class wants to call D class method, how it can call. Okay, so generally we call by creating direct objects. If I have a method in B class, for example, public void B method. In B class, I have a method, namely B method. Consider this is your business method. So if you wanted to call this B class method, if you want to call this B class method from A class, I have a method here, public void A method. From here, if you want to call B class B method, we can't call it directly. We used to create B class object, B equal to new B, then B dot B method. This is how we used to call, but this is not legal now here, right? I will ask you, if you do this, I'll ask you why you created this object. Already your object is configured in test.xml file. Here your class is configured, and during loading time your object is creating. Why again you are creating an object? So you should not create this object. Okay, if I don't create this object, from where I will get this object reference, right? So you just need to do what? Already object is there with container. IOC container is holding your object. You just need that object, right? So we created A class, B class, C class. A, B, C, D classes are implemented, and these classes are configured in our XML file. All these classes are created, and all these classes were configured into your XML, right? We configured all these beans. Bean A, B, C, D are already configured, and we are loading them into our IOC container. We are loading them into IOC container. Then IOC container is taking responsibility of creation of objects. So as soon as you load, right, A object will be created, B object will be created, C object will be created, and D class object also created. Where these objects will create? Usually objects will create in your JVM only. Who created in our JVM? Your IOC container. IOC container did this job. Who did this? IOC container. When you start your IOC container, it created objects for you. A object, B object, C object. A, B, C, D objects are created. In JVM heap memory, what we will have? Only objects, right? So your objects are there in your JVM heap memory. Who created? IOC created. How it created? It is reading your ABCD classes from XML file and it is creating. Now objects are already available. Whenever you run your application, objects will be available in your JVM. Who is creating? IOC creating. Again, why you are creating object here? You need not to create. So you can ask IOC. IOC will have all these references with it. Okay. Your A class reference it will keep here. B reference, C reference, it will keep it in its memory. IOC will remember that where your object is. So the references it will hold A, B, C, D. Otherwise, how it will give that object to us? Okay. It created objects and it will hold that references with IOC. Now, whenever you need that object, already IOC is having that object with her, right? IOC is having objects with it. So you just need to ask. How to ask? You just need to ask IOC, give me B class object. If A requires, right? If A object requires B object, you need to ask IOC, give B object. If B requires C object, you need to ask, give me B or C object. Then C requires D object, you need to ask D object. Via dependency injection concept, you need to ask. Via dependency injection concept. How it works? I'll give only one example. Later I'll jump into more in depth. Okay. So you just need to create B variable dependency here. So how to ask a Spring container? First thing, create whichever object you want. Create that variable reference here. Don't create any object. Create a variable reference here. And either through setter method or a constructor, parameterized constructor, you can take it. This is the way. This is the way that Spring can able to pass that variable to you. Just you need to create your required object reference here and Spring need to pass it to you, right? Okay, you have a mobile and you have a SIM card and you need to have network access. If you have network access, then I can able to make a call. If you don't have that network access, I can't place a call to you. Okay, so you need some gateway where it should allow. So setter method is like a gateway which allows Spring to pass your variable reference here. Okay, via this setter method, Spring can able to pass the object to you. Is it? Yes. Let me put some output statement here. Set B is calling. See this set B method how to call, or else I'll rename it to set B dependency. Okay, this is your setter method. Just you need to configure your setter method here. Okay, there is a way to configure setter method. Property. We are requesting Spring to. I have a property, which means one setter method. I have one setter method B dependency. Into that B dependency setter method, I want to pass this B object. How you will pass? Yeah. So what I was saying is, I have a B class dependency here for A class. Why this dependency came? Because I wanted to call B class methods. That's why I put the dependency here. Otherwise, I don't have dependency. Okay. So just put that variable dependency here and you ask Spring to give me this variable via your setter method. So just you need to configure your setter method name here and pass this B class object reference here. Pass this B class object reference here using reference. That's it. Now A class is having B class object. Run it. This setter method also will be executed, that you can observe. Set B method is calling. Who called? We only called. Set B method is called here. Set B method we called here, right? Set B dependency. We only called it. Set B dependency method we called it. How we called? Via property tag. Why I called? Because I need B class object. Where I need B class object? I need B class object in A class. Why I need B class object in A class? Because I wanted to call B class methods. Okay. Because you need B class method, you need this variable reference here. Because you need B class methods wants to call from here. So that's why B class reference is here. So B class reference is here. To get this B class reference from Spring, you added setter method here. So that setter method you are calling here in XML file using your setter method name. Actually our setter method name is set B dependency. This set is need not here. Just put B dependency and pass your B class reference here. So why I am giving this reference? Because Spring is creating this object. So Spring only will pass this object here. You need not to create object and you need not to pass. Spring will take care of always objects creation and dependency injection. Okay. So Spring created object you will be getting into A class. Now if you want to call A class method, get A class object here. There are two ways to get object in this get bean method, right? By giving your class of reference here directly. So it will understand what you are requesting for. So directly it will give that object. This is one way. The other way is you need to mention ID here. The other way to get your A class object is ID here. Something if you put A reference here, you can call by using ID also. So for that case you need to use get bean of A. You need to typecast it. So use first approach, okay? Or else this approach also fine. Now I got A reference. You can call A dot A method. So I am trying to call A class A method. See what it will do. I am calling A class A method and A class A method is calling B class method. From here the execution will go to B method. So from here it will go here and here you have B method called. The output finally we got is B method called. Okay. So what I want to conclude here, just to create poser classes. Just to create poser classes. Poser. All your classes are poser classes and configure them. And whenever you need one poser class object dependency in another class, you can pass via setter dependency injection or constructor dependency injection, so that each poser class object will be available to other layer. So we use posers, then that posers we can able to do dependency injection. You can inject them into each other layer via dependency injection. You can inject them. So this is the mechanism that Spring follows. Simple posers and dependency injections. So that whenever end user calls, right, controller, whenever end user calls for, from view, right, he will trigger request from view. He will trigger request to view. View will make a call to your controller, and your controller will call to B, B call to C, C call to D. Finally, it will execute your purpose. Maybe if you have database dependency, it will insert data into table. So this is how the flow will execute. Any doubt so far? We'll talk more about dependency injection just to make sure how posers will help. Yeah. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, we will do. Lot of examples we need to do now. Okay. It will take 2-3 days for dependency injection. Okay. So I wanted to jump in there, but I wanted to, put you in a stage that why dependency injection is required. Then I want to discuss complete dependency injection. You understand the purpose of dependency injection, right? Everyone? But no. Basically, yeah, if you want to access intentionally, you can access, but private is private always. Okay. So private purpose is within the class. Outside the class, if you want, then it should be public. Even in Spring also, you need not to cross that rule. You need not to obey your OOPS rules. Keep them, you know, uh, in a same way. It can access, container can access, but you can't access. If container really required to do modifications, it will take care. It might access your private methods or private variables, but you can't. Okay? Yeah. So the purpose of dependency injection is whenever you need an object, another class object in your class, why another class object is required? So when a object is required in your class means whenever you want to call that particular class methods, then you need that particular class object. So instead of creating that particular class object here directly, just keep variable reference, and via dependency injection you can get it. Okay. Now more depth into dependency injection we will go. Okay. More in depth into dependency injection we will go here. First try to understand this dependency injection in a simple way. Yeah. Consider this is a controller class, car class. I'm writing a car class. So time being, consider it as a controller. I have a car class. And I have engine class. Consider like a business. And I have a fuel class. Engine. And here I have a fuel. So this is like a repository class. Okay, timing. So we know all these classes are POSO classes only. If you are dealing with the Spring means POSO classes only. So I have a car POSO, and I have a engine POSO, and I have a fuel POSO. Okay. So now here the dependency is clear. Without fuel, we can't start engine. Without engine, we cannot move car. Okay. So if you see here, car is having dependency of engine, engine is having dependency of fuel. So in this scenario, engine class requires fuel object. So fuel object is a dependency here. How you will pass that fuel object? Either with setter method or constructor. And car is having engine object dependency. How you can pass this engine object here? Again, using setter method or constructor. Right? So car is having dependency of engine, engine is having dependency of fuel. So you need to pass this fuel object into engine, engine object into car. So wherever you have such dependencies, right? I mean, almost for each use case, you will have the dependency, similar dependency. For each use case, right? Controller will have one business will have one repository, one or more repositories. So all that repository objects you need to inject into business, and all that business objects into controller. So always controller will have business dependencies, business will have repository dependencies. Okay. So these dependencies you can pass via dependency injection concept. Whenever a class is having a dependency via dependency injection concept, you can pass it. So what kind of dependencies may occur in your MEC application means, once again, one more drawing. Okay. Controller, business, repository. Repository or DAO, data access object or repository class. And this DAO class or repository class may need some data source objects, means connection pool objects. In real time, we will maintain connection pools. So a connection pool object. Let me put a short name, CP, connection pool. So generally connection pool will get lot of connections from database. So database configurations we need to create connection pool here, right? Connection pool means it will have lot of connections. Pool of connections it will create here, and it will make it available for your repository. Not a single connection. Pool of connections it will fetch from database first. How you will create pool of connections? To create that connections, you need database properties, right? So to create these connections for connection pool, the dependency parameters are your database configuration only. So this CP is having dependency of database connection properties. So database connection properties, what are they? Database connection properties. Class dot for name driver class we load, right? So driver dependency, URL of your database, username, password. All these parameters as a dependency if you pass to your connection pool can able to create pool of connections. Connection pool will create pool of connections. So all these are dependencies. All these parameters are dependencies to your connection pool. And now repository, if it wants to talk with the database or your DAO class, you need to pass that CP here. So CP is the connection pool is the dependency parameter into your repository. Connection pool. Connection pool is the dependency for your repository. So for connection pool class, dependencies are driver name, URL, username, passwords. Maybe they are string type data types. Okay. So driver name, URL, username. Which data types we will use? Simple string type. So here coming to this is a object type dependency. Object type. And business class may need your DAO dependency. Again, it is a object type dependency. and controller class may need your business object. It is again a object type dependency. So you have lot of dependencies. Controller is having business object type dependency. Business class is having DAO object type dependency. DAO class is having connection pool object type dependency. And connection pool is having some string dependencies. Whatever dependency type you have across your controller or business DAO or any other class. Let's say if you have mail service class here, maybe some mail configuration you need to do. Mail configuration. So for mail, you may need to pass your mail host address and something port number that we need to pass to mail API. So maybe they are also string data types. So your class can have any type of dependency. You need not to hard code them. Actually, driver name, URL, username, password, you can hard code. But if you hard code, you are making your class tightly coupled with that particular driver, URL, username, password. In future, if you want to change password, if you want to change the driver type, if you want to change URL of your database, you cannot able to change. So that's why we should not hard code anything within our classes. If I don't hard code, how I will get? You can get it via dependency injection concept. Everything you can pass from your XML file. Everything you can pass from your XML file to your class. So all your POSO classes are having some dependencies, either string type dependencies or object type dependencies. Your dependency type can be anything. Your dependency type can be anything. End of the day, all that classes are POSOs. It can be a controller or business or DAO or connection pool class or a mail API class, any class. End of the day, all these classes are POSO classes only. So your POSO class can have any type of dependency here. Dependencies, right? Dependencies can be anything. Your POSO class might have some driver type dependencies, driver name, URL, username, password. So those all are kind of string type dependencies. Sometimes if you need a port number, it's a integer type dependency. Sometimes you may need object type dependencies. Object means anything, any type of object, either a built-in object or your custom object. You may have array dependencies. You may have collection dependencies. Your POSO class can have any type of dependency. Your POSO class may have requirement of driver username, passwords, port numbers, array collections, any kind of requirement you can have here. You need not to hard code it. You need not to hard code that parameters in your code. You need not to hard code. Whatever data you need here, you can pass that data from XML file. You can configure it in XML file or via properties files. Okay, you can pass this data to your class. Who will take care of it? Between we have IOC container, right? It is having superpowers. It will read everything from your XML file, whatever you configured. Actual data we can pass from here. If you consider all these are dependencies, all these dependencies data will be passed from here. Who will pass? IOC will take care. Your driver's data you can configure here, port numbers, object dependencies, arrays, collections, anything you can pass from here to your POSO class. What is POSO? It can be your controller, business, DAO, anything. For your class, anything you can expect from your XML file. Any data type, challenge me. Any data type you can pass from your XML file to your class. You can challenge me, which is not possible. Everything you can pass. starting from byte data type to byte, short, int, long, char, boolean, string, arrays, collections, custom arrays, custom collections, objects, what not, anything you can pass. So what I'm saying, end of the day, don't put any hard coded values in your POSO class. You can get anything from your XML file. So what is the benefit if I get that from XML file instead of hard coding? You can change that data anytime. Whenever you want, you directly go to XML and do the changes. With very less impact, it will do changes on your application. Let's say a simple example. Today, I wanted to start one application for my company. Okay. So I thought of purchasing Oracle database for my application. So this is my application, some real estate. So I purchased Oracle database. So they are charging monthly, maybe in AWS or in other cloud, $10. $10 they are charging for me. So in my real estate application, inside my classes, if I hard code that Oracle database drivers here, Oracle driver, username, password, URL, everything, if I hard code here inside my class, what will happen? In future, whenever I wanted to shift to database, as I'm paying $10 here, um, some of my friends suggested download MySQL, which is free. You can use it. It will solve your purpose. Oracle only may not required. With the free of cost, you can get it. $0 you need to pay per month. So get it. So immediately my idea shifted to MySQL. I wanted to change it. I want to change it. So if you have such parameters for your business, I'm giving a simple database example, lot of such dependencies you might have. So if I hard code this Oracle database driver name, URL, username, passwords here, I need to edit my application, I need to do that code changes, I need to do recompile, rebuild, deploy, test, lot of things I need to do. But if something I have a properties file, via properties file, if I was passing my Oracle database dependencies to real estate app, I will go to that properties and simply I'll remove Oracle properties and I'll put MySQL properties. And maybe I will restart my application. Since my restart is done, instead of executing on Oracle, my application will start executing on MySQL. So some kind of easy configuration mechanism, if you put to any application, your application will become loosely coupled. Your application will become loosely coupled. Earlier, when I hard coded it, it is tightly coupled with Oracle. Instead of hard coding, if I maintain the data via properties files, my application became loosely coupled. So I can go directly to properties file. I can do changes from Oracle to MySQL. So once I restart, instead of executing on Oracle, it will start executing on MySQL. So easily I can able to change my thoughts. Easily I can able to do the changes in application. If you do tightly coupled dependencies here, again you need to ask one developer, production people, right? They will ask, hey developer, I need a requirement. From next month onwards, we wanted to shift from Oracle to MySQL. Please do necessary changes in the code. So 1 month billing we need to pay to him, maybe 4 lakhs or 10 lakhs. Then he will do simple changes. He will go to the port. He will do that changes. He will recompile, rebuild, and he will send it to production. Why we need to spend that much, 8 lakh rupees, to the developer? If you are a client, if you have simple configuration management, directly you can go and you can change yourself. Maybe if you ask your business people or your assistant who well aware of this, he will go and he will do the changes directly in your XML or properties file. And maybe you can ask your DevOps team to do that restart operation. So they will restart it. So you need not to raise any special request to do dev team to do that minor changes. So your application will become completely lightweight when you follow this dependency injection mechanism. Again, here, while especially while dealing with this object, right, runtime polymorphism rules we follow to make it loosely coupled. For remaining, it is fine, but for object, we will follow different rules that we will see anyway. But what I wanted to conclude here is via dependency injection concept, by using this dependency injection concept, you can pass any data from your XML properties files to your POSO class via IOC, so that this class will become really lightweight. If I do dependency injection, via dependency injection, what we are achieving? Lightweight. What is lightweight? Lightweight means not having direct dependencies. So lightweight application always will make sure easy maintainable, easy maintainable. Again, when we go in depth into the maintainability, we will see easy maintainable, easy to plug and play. Lot of things we can talk, but yeah, for timing, consider you can pass anything from XML file to your poser class, so that you will get lot of benefits. So we will spend next 2-3 days for this dependency injection, right? From simple properties to complex properties, how we can inject them, we will see. Okay, so that you will get full confidence on dependency injection. So there are many examples for dependency injection itself. Okay, these are the ways via setter or constructor you can pass. And what kind of data you can pass means anything. Dependency injection of arrays, collections, required collections. Okay, many types we will pass, that we will see. And there are, yeah, actually in Spring Boot in advanced concepts, really we need not to worry about them. But if we understand very in depth of it here, right, there you will see nothing complex. See, all these are belongs to dependency injection and auto wiring until here. Okay, they are really important concepts till 19th example. Okay.